Well, what happened very quickly after the after the incident, and anybody who's been to Afghanistan knows that nothing stays secret there for very long. And the word of this massacre, mass killing, the suffocation deaths of so many prisoners of war, the word of that began to circulate in northern Afghanistan very quickly. And the first warning that I think any senior officials began to hear from was the International Committee for the Red Cross warned a senior coalition military commander very quickly that this is the responsibility of the U.S.-led coalition to look into, and you have a responsibility to do that. That military commander gave no response whatsoever to the ICRC official who told him about it. Soon after that, the prisoners, some of the survivors of the mass killing, were taken to Guantanamo very soon after the massacre. Probably got there. They were among the first prisoners, I believe, taken to Guantanamo after the prison there opened in January 2002. FBI officials who were at Guantanamo in 2002 began to interrogate prisoners there, and many of them, as many as 10, I was told the FBI that they had survived this mass killing, and they provided very consistent descriptions of the incident. And a senior FBI official who was at Guantanamo told me that he passed on the reports from these interrogations to FBI headquarters and urged an investigation, and was told not to drop the matter because it was not part of the FBI's mission at Guantanamo. Separately, the State Department, eventually, Secretary Colin Powell, asked the War Crimes Ambassador Pierre Prosper to begin to investigate. He tried to investigate this, went to Afghanistan and interviewed General Dostum, the warlord, and was then very quickly found that the Afghan government under Hamid Karzai had no interest in investigating this. He also found, by the way, that the international community, the UN in particular, was very reluctant to investigate this. And then when he came back to Washington, he found that there was the similar reluctance at the White House. And he talked to Zalmay Khalilzad, who was then the White House coordinator for Afghanistan, who raised concerns about whether it would be good to investigate something like this, particularly when the Karzai government was not interested in doing it. And then I found at the Pentagon asked the Special Forces teams in an informal inquiry whether they had any knowledge of this, and they said no. And but then a series of meetings happened between Physicians for Human Rights and Pentagon officials in 2002, in which the Physicians for Human Rights, which had found this mass grave, Dasht-e-Leili, I think in January 2002, were repeatedly told that there was no reason for the Pentagon to investigate. By the summer or late summer of 2002, I think after Newsweek broke a very important story in this, in a cover story in August, that got some renewed attention. But the Pentagon continued to deny requests from Physicians for Human Rights to provide security to go back to the grave site and do a full examination of the mass grave that they had found. And also efforts by the group to ask for a more thorough investigation by the Pentagon were rejected. I was also told that by early 2003, Paul Wolfowitz told a colleague at the Pentagon that the Pentagon was never going to investigate Dostum. So there were a whole series of efforts around the Bush administration where this issue came up, and in each case it was either ignored or rejected.
And so the significance of President Obama saying on CNN Sunday night that he is calling for an investigation, and also Hamid Karzai running for re-election now in the next month, reappointing Dostum chief military advisor.
Yes, it was that really makes this, I think, very relevant today. President Karzai has, you know, in order to win re-election, he's a very good retail politician. General Dostum is an important figure in the ethnic Uzbek community of northern Afghanistan. He's basically the godfather, political godfather of the Uzbeks in Afghanistan. And in order to win that group, Karzai has tried to make peace with Dostum, who had been, you know, everyone knows that Dostum kind of switches sides you know, over the course of his career many times. And last year, he kind of, people's patience in Afghanistan with him ended when he had this very bizarre and brutal incident where he tortured a political opponent. And there was a standoff between the Afghan police and Dostum at his compound in Kabul, and he finally kind of left the country under a cloud to Turkey, where he has, the Turks have kind of been his sponsors. But now Karzai is desperate to, you know, craft a winning political coalition, and he's cut a deal with Dostum to bring him back and reinstate him in exchange for Dostum's endorsement of Karzai in the presidential campaign.
We're talking to James Risen.
President Obama,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add the problem. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to add that the problem for the Obama administration is that politically, it's a very sensitive time for them because they're adding troops in Afghanistan at the same time there's a presidential election. They don't want to be seen as, you know, as meddling in the election, but they also don't want to be sending in U.S. troops to support a government that includes war criminals. So it's a very difficult situation for them.
We're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to play an excerpt of Jamie Doran's documentary, Afghan Convoy, and then come back to our conversation with James Risen and Susanna Sirkin of Physicians for Human Rights. James Risen is author of the book State of War, The Secret History of the CIA and the Bush Administration. His piece this weekend is called U.S. Inaction Seen After Taliban POWs Died. This is Democracy Now! Back in a minute.